Hello, good afternoon or good evening, depending upon where you are. We are my daughter Amy Anderson, who is the photographer today, and I'm Karen Howells, her mother. We are going to do peg dolls. We are in a little bit of a damp Pacific Northwest in Vancouver, Washington, just north of Portland, Oregon, right across the river. And we would love to hear where you are from. So please do that in chat.
Yeah, let us know in the comments where you're from and give us a like or a heart to tell us that you're here and you're watching us.
Yes. So today we're going to do peg dolls, and it's easy and it's fun and it's kind of addictive. And I want to show you first some samples of ones that I have been doing. And which way do we start?
Yeah, you can start either side.
With the Star Wars collection, and this is what Amy gets after.
I love Star Wars.
And this is Yoda, and in order to put ears or something on it, I wanted to show you that it was just done with paper, construction paper, and I glued them on with Mod Podge, and then I painted and I Mod Podged them. So I would not do that for a child because they would be earless in about 5 minutes, but I thought for Amy I would do that. And there's some little touches like Leia's buns, and Yoda has a lightsaber.
Cute.
And then R2-D2 is actually one of the pegs with the top sawed off. So his head sawed off and he was the right size.
Will you show them me?
Oh, yes, I will, but I was going to save that for last, but I will show you because these are what I call characters. They're characters you could get from television or movies or comics or whatever. The next three are caricatures because they are real people. And I'll start with my favorite, my daughter Amy. And this is her Mod Podge picture that she had.
I think the peg doll is cuter than the person.
Oh, that's not true. And then her friend, she loves Elvis. Yep, let me see.
Yeah, that looks good.
We actually went to Graceland one time when we were crossing the country on a drive. That was fun. And then Bernie Sanders shows up everywhere, and he's here too, dressed for winter in Vermont.
Wearing his gloves.
Wearing his gloves. Then the next ones we have are a little bit of a space montage, I guess. And I actually made the rocket from an Easter egg. And I had a little stand, and that's the stand, and those are the flames for takeoff. And I probably should have gotten a wooden egg, but it was easier just to use a plastic egg from my many eggs that we have collected over the years. And my youngest son, Brad, loves robots. So, whoops, somebody dove into the paint. We are going to give him the space one. I knew I was going to need paper towels right away.
Accidents happen in crafting.
They do.
They're happy little accidents, as Bob Ross says.
Well, yeah, opportunities to show brilliance, I guess. So today we are going to do a couple of different dolls, and I'm going to try to give you some techniques and some tips. We do have a list of materials and some tips, and then a step-by-step document. And if you want that, put that in the chat, and somehow we'll get connected and get that to you. And I'll show you the one document actually has pictures of everything in the stages, so it makes it as easy as can be. And most of the things about peg dolls that I love is that it's just so much fun. And I started doing them because I wanted to do a doll for one of my granddaughters for a dollhouse that I had given her and her sister for Christmas, and she's still 2, or she just turned 2, and some of the bigger dolls weren't right, and so I thought, you know what, I was on Pinterest and I saw all these peg dolls, and I thought, that's awesome. So I just started painting little dolls, and
you got hooked.
Stop. Oh yeah, it's a lot of fun. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to show you is I'm going to show you the pegs, and this is just some of them. The taller ones are the 3.5, and some published to be 3 7/8. I'm not sure that's the case, but I don't know. And they're readily available. These are 3.5 inch, and these are an easy size to start with. Then there's smaller ones, which I don't recommend. This size is okay. This is a 2 inch. And this is okay for kids, but you really have to watch them. And that's not, they do stuff fast. That's not good. This is a 1.5 inch. And again, really not for little kids. And they even make them smaller and more dangerous. The 1 inch variety.
That's for the adults only.
Yes, and for displays and fun things.
You could do Christmas.
Yeah, baby showers. You
Yeah.
could make little babies and have them with, you know, a little gift bag or attached to it. So I do want to mention some supplies. I have like the biggest collection of brushes and some of the oldest ones ever. For this, I like to have ones that have kind of a more of a pointed, but
yeah.
And then I like to have some of them be very small tips.
For fine details?
Yes. But there's another thing we use for details too. And then the wider brushes for filling in and also for the Mod Podge, because we use two different varieties of Mod Podge actually. We use the matte and then the gloss. And the gloss is the final coat.
I'm guessing we don't want to go with too big of a brush.
Correct.
Okay, because that would be, you would get paint everywhere.
Yes. So I use foil as my surface because I am messy. And so I just, even those little blotter things that you can have, I would get it all messed up. So I just use aluminum foil, and I can just crumble it up and throw it away at any time. Then I always have a little thing of water where I put all my paintbrushes as I use them, so then I don't have to wash them out until I have a whole jar of those. Another thing that's very important is a good pencil and an eraser, because you're going to be drawing, at least when you start, you're going to be drawing the face and the design for the clothing. Then one of the things that you don't have to have, you could use a knitting needle, you can use a tip of a pencil, you can use an old pen that doesn't work.
You can use the end of a paintbrush.
End of a paintbrush, right. These are mandala daughters, and people use those for mandala designs, but they also use them for painting rocks and that type of thing. But they have two ends, and one is a very tiny end, and then one is a larger end. And you use those for details, which we're going to use in just a minute when we get a few steps in. And we also use them for eyes, and it just helps you. I've used a paintbrush, and I've used oil markers, and they kind of leach out to the wood itself, and you don't really want to do that. You want to have some good dots. So here's a little example of the mandala daughter.
For the eyes?
For the eyes. That's right.
That's pretty even.
Yeah, and it makes it easy. And then you have any of your paint. Now I do want to show, is that you going to be able to see this?
Yep.
Okay. This paint is really too stiff to use. You have paint that has some fluidity to it, because if you don't, you get it starts to drag and you end up with kind of a mess. But one of the things that I like about the blue, a little bit stiffer, is because you can do because it takes the paint differently. So that makes it okay. The brown is also one of the, I don't know what it is about brown, but it's one of the harder colors to paint with. And I'm not sure if it's just the pigment that they use or whatever, but mine is too goopy. It looks more like chocolate pudding. Okay, so we are going to start with the very first thing, and that is your blank dolls. And I'm going to move all these over. Do we have any questions or?
Yeah, if you're
Shout outs
watching, let us know where you're from. Tracy Priest says hi from the UK, so she's over in England. Maybe.
One of my favorite places.
I'm guessing. Tracy, you can tell us specifically where you're from. But if you guys have questions, let us know. Just put them in the comments, and I will read them out as we go along.
Okay, except for the little blob of black on the back of this doll, these are the blanks. And what you want to do is I think you can see it better with this one, is you want to find the circle. These are wood after all, and just the way that they make the pegs, they have a circle, and that makes a nice surface for the face, and it is easier for you to find the center and place the eyes. And so that's what you do at the very first. You also want to find out whether you want to use the angel shape, which is more of a female, or you want to use just the cylindrical. And you can use either for either. That's no magic.
We have some Floridians on.
What's that?
We have some Floridians on.
Oh, you might. I don't think you know my middle son, Kyle. He just moved there with his family. So I hope it's nice and sunny and warm. Maybe not sunny right now because it's about 7 o'clock with you. Okay, so the first thing you do is you get your peg dolls and you find the circle side. The next thing, and I suggest that you know what you want to paint, but you don't always have to, because if you make a big enough goof like this, you may be ending up making a cap. So it does help. You can look in Pinterest. You can actually, when I make some of the different things like the Asian dolls that I make, I look at the internet and I just Google and just do like Chinese dress or Chinese robe. And so I took that from one. And then for my African prints, I wanted to do a dashiki. And those dashiki designs are very, very detailed. So I decided to do a dot design.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. And I have a tip about the way I did the hair to make it give it texture. But say you know what you want to do. And for me, I want to make a mom and dad, or a grandma and a grandpa that like farms. Because that's how my husband and I started life together. So
that was like in 1914, wasn't it, Mom?
Around the time of the Spanish flu, yes. A little bit earlier. But I still do silver and fit aerobics Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So, yeah. But anyhow, so I have drawn the grandma with pencil. And one of the nice things about drawing with pencil is that as you paint, you tend to erase if you don't want to have that pencil line show. Here's the farmer.
And obviously you can erase your design and start over if you're not happy with it.
When you draw the cat instead. Yeah. And I have done that many times. Okay, So the very first thing that I do after I've drawn the design is I start with the head. And the thing is that I think that there are, if you look on Pinterest, there are some people that do some super detailed peg dolls. I'm not much into the super details. I think they're beautiful, but I wouldn't want to give them to kids if I had spent like a week doing it. So I like to make it very simple. I think the key is drawing the hair and the eyes, and I think after that, pretty much for the clothing, you can do what you want and make a few mistakes, and it's okay. So we have a girl and a boy here, and so I've got these two in about the same stages. I painted the face, and I did the hair. And then the step that I do, and I recommend this, especially if you're like me, quite messy, is you put matte Mod Podge. Show the product here. Matte Mod Podge. You coat the head with the matte Mod Podge so that if you are working on the body and you get your finger in paint and you end up putting it on top of her head, then you can wipe it off really quick. And that's easier than having to repaint, but you can always repaint. So the next step that I do after I have done the face and the hair is I do the Mod Podge, and then I start on the clothing. And I have several examples of littler ones that this is basically the same thing. And I really don't know what I want to do as far as, I think this is going to be a princess, but I'm not sure. And then here's a little boy, and I just drew his hair on. And so I'm not following my own directions. I didn't start with the head on that.
Where you were showing various stages of
Yes.
completion.
Okay, so we're going to go over to the farmer here. And I have painted on with I start with the red. And the red also, I would want to put a second coat of the red on. The pigment of the red really goes into the wood. And I think this one was a satin paint, the blue. This was not. This was a flat. And I really have strong opinions about paint. Some people say just to buy really cheap paint, but I think that the quality of the paint makes all the difference, especially if you are trying to get a nice line. And so I tend to buy Plaid products. I'll give them a shout out. Apple Barrel and
Folk Art.
Folk Art. You can name, Amy knows all of them.
Martha Stewart multi-surface. Those are really good paints with strong pigment that work well on the wood surface.
Right. So we're going to do the detail on the man farmer here pretty soon, but I want to start with doing the eyes and the hair. Now I use, like I said, I use the daughter, and you have to be careful of not getting it all over. You just actually just touch the paint, and then where you have and I'm doing it far away, so I hope I get it right. Where you have your dot, then you just put your dot. And
so you're going paint on top of pencil.
yes.
And just so everyone knows, if you happen to see pencil after you paint, you can easily erase it.
Absolutely.
And the paint will not erase as long as you've let it dry. And then the pencil line will be gone.
Correct. Okay. So one of the things, this amount of paint would do like 8 dolls. A lot of people suggest that you use the cap. and just shake the bottle of paint and then take paint out of the cap. But it gets messy when you put the cap back on. So I do like to use something else. And again, I usually use my foil for that. All right, I'm going to paint both the farmer's head and the lady's because there's two different techniques that I use. Now when I pick a brush, I want to pick the one that I know that I'm going to have the most success with and the most control. So for his hair, which you can see, hair and beard, I am going to use this tip. And it's flat, it's pretty short, but it has a little bit of softness at the tip. So what I do is I start out and I don't put much on the brush, and I tend to use my baby finger to hold the doll. And then I follow the line and just draw with I basically draw with my paintbrush. And I get the more difficult places first. And that's one of the things that you can find on Pinterest is you can find a whole bunch of faces with all sorts of different hairstyles and cute little ribbons in the hairstyles or whatever, and it's really, really fun. Okay, so now I have just a little bit of his bangs there. So I'm going to start on his beard. And I'm just going to, with the paint, and remember I said this brown is a little bit goopier. It's more like pudding than it is paint. And it's a little bit more difficult to put on. But
I have a couple tips for that.
okay.
So you can use what's called a flow medium, which there's a folk art brand flow medium, and you can add it to paint to thin it out a little bit, but still keep the pigment. And then you can actually add a little bit of Mod Podge, and you would want to add the same Mod Podge that you're using as the finish. So you could just go ahead and take your mat and stir a little bit in, and that would be another solution for that too.
That's awesome. Okay, so you see what I've done is I painted just the outlines of where I have drawn. I'll go ahead and paint down the side. And I don't know why my little finger is the nice balancer, but it always helps. And I don't paint the faces. I don't paint the faces. What I do is I will put a little bit of watered down paint for such as my African prince. I basically stained his face rather than painted his face. A lot of people will want to paint the face, but I like the skin color just to be what the wood is.
And you can paint it, and then if you want to, you can draw pencil lines over it. So if you use the folk art and you decide to use a flesh color or any other skin color that's available, you can take your pencil, draw right over it, and then paint right over that too. That's absolutely fine. The only trick is just making sure that the paint's dry before you draw anything on top.
Right. And for am I too far away?
No,
here?
you're good.
Okay. Again, I'm following my pencil line. That's why it's really more successful to draw on what you want. And you just follow the lines. Then I'm not going to finish this, but I'm going to show you what I do to... Now, here's another brush, and this looks like a watercolor brush to me. And I don't know the number or anything, but it's a very nice brush. I've used it a lot, and it still isn't gunky looking. So I would actually probably at this point dip it in the water a little bit, dip it in the paint, and then I start filling in. Just this way you can fill in faster than with your little bitty brush. And you put in 2 coats maybe, or like I did with Amy's, she has a little bit of highlighting in her hair, and so I wanted to make it, you know, like hair usually is, multicolors. And so I did that. So then you fill in your hair, and you'll end up with something like this. Now, Farmer's aging, so he got a little bit of a metallic silver wash on his head. And so now I'm ready to do the clothes. Now I'm going to start with the red, and that's always the most difficult one for me. And here's the brush I'm using for that. And again, it's a shorter brush, kind of a tighter bristle, but it's soft at the very end, so I know I can move the paint along the line.
Now, why is the red difficult for you?
It's difficult because it doesn't really absorb the same on all parts of the wood. So like even with the plastic egg, it took me 4 coats to really get the color I wanted. This Farmer, I have put 2 on so far, and it really is not an even color. But after you put the gloss Mod Podge on the top, it really gives it some depth, I think. So, you know, I try not to be real fussy about that. So again, you're going to just paint along the lines that you've made. And here's the deal. You want to have fun. So if you mess it up, you give them a turtleneck instead of a V-neck. You don't. Life is too short to be too fussy about some things, especially crafting, because crafting is second only to gardening for me. If I need to chill out, that's what I do.
And to say something a little bit about the paint coverage, if you use paints like Apple Barrel or other paints that are intended for more kid-friendly projects, you're going to have less pigment than if you use something like Folk Art, which is a pigment-based paint that's intended for a little bit more artsy, you know, upscale projects. So it's not that there's anything wrong with, you know, using a less expensive paint. It's just that you may have to use more coats. So that's the deal with craft paint.
Right. Now, I've used red first because if I mess up on the red, then as far as the lines go on his overalls, I can go back and I can sharpen the lines when I do the blue. And the blue is a little bit stiffer, like I said, so it is, you have to take more time with that except for the body. So I do all of the reds, and that would be the back and the sides. Now you notice I don't have arms on these. I have arms on this one. Arms, and Bernie has arms because he has to have his gloves. But other than that, I'm not big on putting arms on. I want to keep it simple, and the simpler the better. So now I've got my head with the mat on. It's painted, ready to go. I have, and if I were to get red on it, I could just wipe it off. Then I have my red done, and I've fast forward, and we have the blue done. And now we're ready to do some detailing. And this is where it was kind of, you've got your shape of everything, but you know, I put, you know, the pant split and the fly in there and the waist of the overalls, but you really don't have to. you can figure out how it's going to look at the end by doing this, but it's not absolutely necessary. The other parts where you're painting different colors, those are necessary. Now you're just an artist, and we're going to do some of the detail work. And there's, at this point, because I do have Mod Podge on the head, I can hold that, and when I am, Amy, tell me if it's going to not show, but what I do is I use the table itself to get a circle around if I'm drawing a whole circle all the way around. And when I do that on the aluminum foil, I will do like half of the circle, and then I'll rock it back and forth, and that way I can keep the line straight.
So you just hold your brush or tool,
Right.
and then
And
do it like a log, like roll it like a log roll.
right. And then when that's dry, and the paint dries incredibly fast, you can turn it over and do the same thing on the back. Now we're going to do a little bit of dotting, and I want to have some smaller dots, so I'm not going to use the eye end. I'm going to use like a little pointy end. And I am going to just kind of do some different things. I always like overalls to have a pocket, so I'm going to start a little pocket. And if you don't get enough paint on the other dots, you just go back and you just dot, and that's the top of the pocket. I'm going to put a little dot down here.
I like the idea of using dots to make your lines.
Yeah. And I have done that, and then I filled in. But I think it looks really cute to do the dots. Oops, don't want to burn on there. Okay. And again, it's not perfect. You're giving an idea. Okay.
There's no rules.
Yeah. There's rules and everything, but there aren't that. Now, if you've ever seen a lot of jeans or whatever, and I haven't tried this, but I'm going to, is they have orange thread in the old-fashioned jeans. And so I would just take it and put dots, very light ones, down the side. And you want to play around with the dotter so that you get the right amount of paint on it. And you can always go back for more paint and put a little bit more. So that's how, you know, the little orange threads that you find in jeans.
Yeah.
And it goes really quick. So you can get the idea that you're going to end up with jeans that, and you could have done this in orange as well, but the pocket kind of likes to stand out. So your brighter, your white and yellow will stand out a little bit more than anything else. And then you have the fly, which I'm just going to start a waist here.
Now, can you see the pencil marks through the paint?
No.
Okay. So you just kind of got an idea of where you wanted to put your waist. Okay.
That's why I said it's kind of a waste of your time to do too much. But so you can see right there, it's not perfectly straight, but it's going to look really cute when it's all done. And that's why it's a low pressure, very addictive craft to do. And then you just do a fly, and I can never remember if the flat side is to the left or the right, but there's rules in the clothing industry to say which one it is. So I'm just breaking the rules, I think, probably.
I think a good place to start would be with someone you know, because basically if you make a peg doll of them, no matter how it looks, they're tickled.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone likes a peg doll of themselves. So pick your sister, your mom, your dad, one of your kids, your husband, your dog, somebody that you know, and make a peg doll of them. Or a famous character.
Yes, such as Bernie Sanders.
Or Elvis.
Or Elvis. Yes.
I want to do a David Bowie one.
Oh, that would be cool.
I think David Bowie would be very cool.
Now, I was talking about the textured hair, and I do have a little bit more textured hair on the grandma. And the way that I did my African prince was I just took the daughter and I dotted the hair all over the top. So I'm gonna...
So you didn't put down a base coat?
Nope. And I just dotted it all over. And it gave it some texture. And this is a time that I put quite a bit of paint on the daughter, so that as it dries, it has a little bit of texture to it. So that was my interpretation of how to do curly hair, a little bit texture.
I like that idea.
Yeah. And for the grandmother, so that's just a bunch of dots, and you can let it dry, see how it looks, then go back and do some more. Or, such as the grandma, put that in there. What I did was, I did it a bunch of little twirls, and I'll show you what I mean by a bunch of little twirls. Is I put a bun in the back of her head, and I did draw where I wanted the bun just to make sure that it was in the back instead of on the side. And as I said, I end up with paint everywhere. That is my true talent in life. I was telling Amy about my mother. She used to paint. She didn't really do a lot of physical labor, but she painted one time in a velvet caftan and never got a drop on her body. And I thought that was...
That's a talent.
I know, and I thought I could do that. Now I'm going to paint with pink hair because I don't have any, because she's a grandma and she can do pink hair. So I don't have the silver out. And there's one thing about dealing with metallics. Metallics are a little bit difficult because you have to paint multiple coats to get a really adequate coverage.
So I have a trick of the trade for that as well.
Okay.
So one way to help with metallic paint, because it frequently, the focus of metallic paint is more on the metallic part of it. So what helps it pop off the surface of whatever you're painting is to do a base layer of an acrylic paint in a similar color. So like for a silver metallic, you could do a base coat of a light gray. And then when you applied the metallic paint, it would pop off a little bit better.
Okay, so you see I've done, I don't know if they can see that very well, can they?
Yeah, I can see it.
Oh, okay, because
I mean, it's showing up light, but that's okay.
Okay, we'll get her a little bit, we'll give her a little bit of a, I'm starting to draw paint chips here. So what you do is, again, you do just little C's all over the place. And those C's kind of give a little wisp of curly hair. And then when you're done with getting your hair in there, all over, and then you don't do the bun yet, you would go back and you would put some white in there, just for highlights. And that kind of gives it a little bit of a texture. When I get really old...
You're going pink?
I'm going some color. I don't know. I haven't colored my hair for a long time. But I'm going to go extreme. Anything but orange. I don't want orange hair. I mean, I love redhead hair, but that's if it's natural. Okay, but some people look really good with red hair, and, you know, I'm not judging. So anyway, that is one of my tips for hair. And, let's see. Is there anything that anybody would like to see me
Yeah, if you have questions, leave them in the comments. I haven't seen any questions roll through yet, but I would love to see some comments and questions from you guys about making peg dolls, and also who you would turn into a peg doll.
So, so here is, when you're doing the clothing, and you know, this is Princess Leia. She's most famous for her buns, right? So you accentuate that with a darker color, and then you don't have to really do too much on the rest of it. You know, gave it a part down the middle, and her clothing is very simple, but even my husband knew who all of these were, so he was my test. Who is this one? Who is this one? And so, because I had put enough detail in to give him the clue who it was. And this is another case. You really can't see the contrast very well, but I put 3 different colors together, just kind of dropped it in the palette and for his hair color, because his is a little bit dishwater blonde, and so
Luke, I am your father.
Yes.
I think what I noticed about the peg dolls, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that you pick out the features, the most recognizable features of the thing.
Yes.
And those are the features that you focus on.
Yes. And there's one more tool, I guess, you can use, and that is oil-based pens.
Oh.
And I have a box of 24, and they come in a larger size.
What brand of markers are those?
This is...
Just out of curiosity.
I don't know. Can you read that?
I don't know.
Painter?
Where did you get them?
I'm on Amazon.
Okay. Oh, okay. Pine tar. Pintar. Paint markers. Something like that.
Pintars.
We're better at crafting than pronouncing
Yes.
words.
And that was recommended for a mandala painting. And, you know, the annoying thing about the pens when you get them is, and these, they were all wrapped in itty bitty plastic, and so I had to take all the plastic off.
Oh, man.
And then they don't have any ink at the tip. These do.
You got to charge them.
And then you have to charge them. Well, I was thinking of my mother and her velvet caftan and thinking, I don't have to get paint on me. And so I was wearing a pretty new top, and I started shaking the silver, and the silver's in there just to taunt me. And anyway, the silver tip flew out, and I now have a lovely top with a streak of silver on the front.
We have a question from Kimberly.
Okay.
What are Yoda's ears made from?
They are made from, actually, they're made from blue construction paper. I tried felt. I tried a lot of different things. And I think you might be able to see, do you think
you can see. Yeah.
Where they're glued on, and I glued them on straight. I made, you know, I just cut out what I thought looked like right size ears with a little tab on the back. And they are blue. Couldn't find a green in my construction paper to look like him. So I just glued them on and made sure they were dry. And then and well glued on. And then I did another coating of the paint on the top and the back. And then I did Mod Podge on top of that. And they are still flexible. Like I said, I would not give them to a child because poor Yoda would lose his ears.
So the way that you seal them all is with the Mod Podge.
Yes. And
that black paint.
Okay. Like I said, I thought I could do my mother. Now, one of the things is that these paintbrushes I love. Amy introduced me to this brand, and it's a Michael's product, and you just have to, for the Mod Podge, you just have to unstiffen the bristles and make sure you washed them out real well, but you never do. And then one of the things about the gloss is that you don't want to get too much on there. You want to have your coverage, but you will end up getting a lot of texture. So this probably isn't the better brush to use on this. So I will get a different one. This is a newer one. This one came in the mandala kit that I got all the things for. And you smooth it out, and you see the difference between all the lines, and it's smooth. And sometimes I put 2 coats on there, sometimes just 1.
You really only need to put 1 if they're going to be for display, just to shine it up a little bit and protect the paint. I know what question people are going to ask, and I can answer it already, which is, can I give these to children if there's Mod Podge on them? And the answer is that Mod Podge is a non-toxic product, but it's also not a food safe product. So they're safe for children to handle, and if a kid pops it in their mouth and you take it out quickly, it's fine. There's no reason to worry. But you shouldn't let a child hold on to them and suck on them, and as a baby might do. So Mod Podge is absolutely safe for children, just not recommended for food or being in mouths or anything like that. So.
And I made a set of a lot of different characters and dolls for my granddaughter Una, which is how I started in this. And she is not, she just turned 2, and it was for her 2nd birthday. And she has an older sister who is 4.5. And she doesn't put things in her mouth. And so if you have a child that doesn't put things in their mouth, then you're safe with giving them one. What about dishwasher Mod Podge? Will that work at all?
I mean, that will make them more washable. But still, none of the most acrylic art products are not rated for food safety, so it's just best practice to keep them out of the mouths of young children.
Okay. Well, that's about it for today, and I hope you have a lot of fun. If you have any questions, just post on Mod Podge, the Mod Podge site for Amy. If you want to get the supplies list, or you want to get the step-by-step instructions,
we'll put those in the group.
Yep. So I hope you have a lovely evening, afternoon, dinner, whatever's coming up your way. And I just thank Amy for setting everything up. And the Mod Podge group people, you're just wonderful. And my friends that have joined us, you're wonderful too. Love you all.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great night. Bye.